Hello everyone, this is Steve Huff from SteveHuffPhoto.com, and I am here today with the Leica X Vario, and this is the camera that's been causing all kinds of controversy and all kinds of anger and hate and bitterness, and it's polarized a lot of people because the main reason, and I'll tell you why that's happened, is because Leica, when they did the teaser for this camera, they were doing the teases as and hyping it as a mini M. Now an M is totally different. An M, I have the M240, and I will tell you right up front that the M240 is much different than the Leica X Vario. The Leica X series is not an M camera whatsoever, so they should have teased it as a Monster X camera instead of a mini M. Because in all reality, the only thing it shares with the M is the body shape. It looks kind of like a smaller M240, and it looks nice, as you can see, beautiful design. But what's the thing here? What's the problem? This big long lens that's attached. You can't take the lens off because it's a fixed lens APS-C camera. Now the lens on this is equivalent to a 28-70, and the kicker, this is what kind of got so many people upset, is the aperture starts at f3.5 and that's at 28mm. By the time you hit 50, you're at f5.1. By the time you hit 70mm, you're at f6.4. Now this can cause problems in a few ways. One of the ways is, say you're outside, even using a tripod, shooting a landscape, but it's overcast, maybe evening light, not sunny, kind of dreary. If you're shooting at 70mm, you're going to have to bump up the ISO a bit because you're already at f6.4. So you're going to have to, you can't shoot at base ISO. Street shooting, the autofocus is not fast enough. You can't set manual focus because it does have the distances on the lens here, as you can see. Once you click this lens out of AF, it clicks. You can move it and set the focus to where you want it to be. So you can zone focus with the lens quite easily. Above that is where you set your focal length. So you have 28, 35, 50, and 70, and everything in between. But like I said, by the time when you're at 28, you could shoot wide open at f3.5. By the time you get to 50, as soon as you move it a little bit out of 28, you lose that f3.5. So by the time you hit 70, you're at f6.4. So that's what I mean when you read me saying, when you read what I've written where I've said it's a slow lens. I'm not talking about slow in autofocus, though it is slow in autofocus when you're shooting in dim light. I'm talking about aperture speed. So what this means is you will need a lot of light to shoot this camera. It's not the best at available light. It's not recommended for low light or dim light. If you wanted to go out and shoot street at nighttime, I would highly recommend the Sony RX1 over this. It's in the same price range. This camera is $2,850 for an APS-C Leica with a zoom lens 28-70 built in. A little pricey if you ask me, when you can get the Sony RX1R, the brand new one without the AA filter, for $27.95, and that offers a full frame sensor, a Zeiss 35 f2 aperture lens, and that thing can pretty much see in the dark. But let's forget all about that right now and talk about what the X Vario is for. I was able to shoot it on our recent SteveHuffPhoto.com road trip to the Palouse in Washington and captured some great images with it. But again, those were all in great light. So when the light is great, you will get great results. I'm going to go over the menu here for you. You can see the menu, and this thumb grip looks like the M240. But there is a problem before I go into the menu. This dial right here, when you shoot the camera and you hold it, you have to hold it like this because there's no grip. So my palm always hits this button. So every time I go to shoot and frame a shot, this would pop up and it would ruin the shot. So that's a major design flaw, and I talk about that in my review. But let's go over the menu. You have your JPEG resolution, and another flaw is this button here on the M240 will select your menu items. This does nothing. So you have to go press the menu and push this way to the right. It's kind of irritating. 16 megapixels all the way down to 1.8 megapixels. Your file format, you can have JPEG Superfine, JPEG fine, raw and fine, raw and super fine. So you have all of those options. Video resolution, you have 1080p or 720p. That's about it. That's all you get. Auto ISO settings, this is where you set your slowest shutter speed, but the max you can go to is 1/30th of a second, which I'm always hitting if I take this in anything but sunlight, it seems. Exposure metering, you have multi-point, center weighted, and spot. Continuous shooting is high or low. The menus are very simple, as you can see. AF assist lamp, off or on. You'll need it in the dark. Manual focus assist, what that does is, I'll show you right now. Say, I'm going to put it into manual focus, right? And let's see what we got here. I don't really have anything in front of me that I can use. But say we want to manually focus. What the X Vario will do is, when I take it out of autofocus, you will see this center patch open up, and then you move the focus ring until you're in focus. Image stabilization. It says image stabilization, but it's electronic software image stabilization, and in reality it doesn't work very well. Video stabilization is also so-so. Preset film, you have standard, vivid, natural, black and white natural, and black and white high contrast. The standard looks good, the natural looks good, very muted, and the vivid's way overkill on the color. Sharpness, this only affects the JPEGs, remember. So I like having the sharpness at medium high if I'm going to use a JPEG because it makes it pop a little more. Flash sync, start of exposure, end of exposure. Monitor brightness, this is your playback menu. You have play on monitor, menu on monitor, all this setting. Auto review, auto power off, auto LCD off, color space, which you have Adobe or sRGB. Date time, you set that. Wind noise cancellation if you're recording video. Shutter volume, I like to keep it to off, otherwise it gives you a fake shutter sound. Language, you could choose your language. HDMI, firmware version 1.0. So there you go, that's the whole menu system. Your ISO settings can go from auto all the way to 12,500. So that's your ISO settings. On the top of the X Vario, you have your shutter speed dial, where you can set it to A for aperture priority, and you can go and set your shutter speed manually if you like to shoot in manual mode. Aperture priority seems to work very well. Here you have the aperture. It starts at f3.5, f4, f5.6, f8, all the way up to f16. So that's, you could also put it into automatic mode by setting it to A and A, then you're in automatic mode. So the camera's pretty simple. Right here is your video record button, which will record your HD video. I did some sample video. I wasn't that impressed by it. It's not like I'm going to go out and make movies with this, but if I was at a family event and say a birthday party and wanted to capture some moments, I'd shoot a little video, no problem. On the bottom of the camera is where you will have your tripod mount, battery, and SD card compartment. It flips open just like it did on the X1 and 2. You have your battery here and your SD card there. The battery life is so-so. I say you're going to get about 200 shots per charge, depending on how much you use your LCD. So I would suggest having a second battery. The camera's pretty large. It's much larger than an X1 or 2. In fact, I'm going to show you what it looks like next to the Leica M240. So here we are. Here we have the Leica X Vario. Here we have the 240. I have some black dots on here covering up the camera a little bit for some stealthy shooting. I also have the EVF on the 240, which I can take off, and the EVF easily fits onto the X Vario, so it's interchangeable. But as you can see, the size difference is not that major. In fact, the X Vario is less pocketable due to the big honkin' lens on the front. So the M240 actually looks not that far off in size. M240 is $7,000. The Leica X Vario is almost $3,000 at $2,850. Is it worth $2,850? Well, there's cameras that can do kind of the same thing. You have the Fuji X Pro 1 XE1. You could slap an 18 to 55 zoom on it, and get close results. You're not going to get that sharpness and detail that you get from this lens, because the lens on the X Vario is superb. It's sharp corner to corner. It gives you brilliance across the frame. The color is really, really good right out of the camera. In fact, the color is better out of this than it is out of the M240 over here. So I cannot put the image quality or the lens on the Vario down in any way whatsoever. Image quality wise, it's fantastic. The lens is fantastic. The flaws are the slow aperture lens, the fact that you can really only use it to shoot still subjects. You can't use it to shoot action, and it's kind of a one-trick pony is what I call it. So you can get cheaper cameras, much cheaper as a matter of fact, that do kind of the same thing. You won't get that little bit of Leica look that you get in these files, and it is there no matter what anyone says. It's in the color and a little bit of the rendering. But like I said, there's the Sony NEX series, the Sony RX1, the Fuji X series. All of these are cameras, and if it were me buying today and I had $28.50 to spend, I would buy the Sony RX1R, the brand new one without the AA filter, because it's an all-around general use camera. You can use it in daylight with amazing results. You could use it at night with amazing results. You can use it anytime. I've done street shooting with it and got back incredible results. So for that kind of money, the only reason that you might want to buy this is if you want a Leica. If you want a Leica and you want to spend about $3,000, you can take gorgeous photos with the Leica X Vario. Just be sure you have enough light to do so, because once you get to the low light, you're going to have problems with focusing. You're going to have to bump the ISO way up, and it's just a little irritating to use in those scenarios. But you can read all about that and more in my full review, which is a big 7,000 word review with tons of photo samples and full-size images from RAW out of the camera over at stevehufffphoto.com, and you can check it out right now. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.